I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. My Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Those up with the head. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25, 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
The drama has ended. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have announced their new offensive coordinator with an in-house promotion for pass game coordinator, Josh Grizzard. The Buccaneers have a new offensive coordinator, Evan. And this is probably, after the fallout of Liam Coen and the drama that came with him taking the head coach job up in Jacksonville, a lot of people were concerned about not only who the new offensive coordinator was going to be, but what kind of system they may potentially be implementing, the continuity factor for not just the Buccaneers offense, but quarterback Baker Mayfield, who cannot seem to get an offensive coordinator to save his life throughout his young NFL career. But here we are. The Bucs make it official. Josh Grizzard gets an in-house promotion, and he is the new offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a live edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Emergency podcast, if you will. I don't want to call every single one an emergency podcast, but once we get to this point in the offseason, it's kind of like an by news basis that we do a live show like this one. Very excited to dive into this. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew. Joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. Got to get the formalities and the intro out of the way. Evan, your thoughts on the Grizzly Bears, the Buccaneers' new offensive coordinator?
Yeah, so obviously, Josh Grizzard was the Buccaneers' passing game coordinator this past season. And look, I think sort of as the coming days went, I think it became more clear that he was probably the favorite. They could have gone with a guy, like Nate Scheelhaase, a guy like Nick Caley, both from the Los Angeles Rams. They interviewed a couple other guys too, but I think it was pretty clear that Grizzard had a pretty good chance at this, and they ended up making that move. It's important, I think, to keep the continuity, obviously. And yes, I mean, the passing game coordinator is a lot different than calling plays, right? It's a lot different. It's a different responsibility. But Liam Coen had said during the season even that Josh Grizzard was in charge of the Buccaneers' third down offense for the most part. Now, I don't think he was like calling the plays on third down, but he was in charge of putting in the packages and stuff like that for their third down packages and everything that they had there, everything at their disposal. And the Buccaneers were the best team in the NFL percentage-wise on third down. I Bleav it was 50.9% they converted at. So it's a pretty high rate. I mean, it's over half of the time that you're getting your third downs. I'm not sure if that's going to be the same number next year, because that's going to be hard to replicate, but that was one of the guys that was behind that number, and I think it's well-deserved. He's clearly had a lot of fans in the building, and they felt, after they interviewed a bunch of guys, right? He was the only in-house guy that they interviewed. They did not interview Thad Lewis, like many thought that they might. They only interviewed him, so he was the only in-house guy that they felt was the best for the job. It was him versus the field, basically, right? Because there was a bunch of outside candidates. So they felt he was best for the job, and now he gets it, and they're hoping to keep some level of continuity here for the Bucs and what they've started on offense last year. Now, obviously, Liam Coen departing, but for the most part, I mean, your coaching staff should be intact. Maybe minor changes here and there, but for the most part, I think you're looking at a pretty similar coaching staff to what the Bucs had in 2024.
Yeah, continuity is the name of the game, and again, you had brought up Liam Coen giving Grizzard some praise throughout the regular season. He was an advisor to Coen, essentially, helped him out with the game plan every now and again, talked about his importance there, and I think, his relationship with the roster as well is going to be important, because we opened the show and I had mentioned Baker Mayfield, and that's going to be, point A being who's the new offensive coordinator going to be, and point B for a lot of people being, I hope it's someone who can allow Baker to continue to thrive in the offense that he's been thriving in these last couple of seasons. I know that there were some adjustments between Canales and Liam Coen, but I would argue there's going to be even less turnover now. It's obviously not going to be exactly the same because, Grizzard taking over as a first-time play caller in the NFL, his tendencies are going to be different. His adjustments are going to be different. He's not going to be the same offensive coordinator that Liam Coen was, but it is the same baseline, I would argue. And again, we talk time and time again, when we thought Coen was coming back, the biggest pro to him coming back was the continuity on the offensive side of the ball. Not that many adjustments from year to year. And this is an offense that, like you said, statistically was one of the best in franchise history, the best in the NFL last year on third down. The Bucs were money on third down, and Grizzard was a huge reason why. But you also promote from within, and this is a guy, too, that has shown in the past that he can prove his worth through multiple coaching staffs. I know that Liam Coen moved on as the offensive coordinator, but when he was in Miami, he was held over from a couple of different coaching staffs. He started with Adam Gase, stayed with the Dolphins during Brian Flores, and then continued to stay with the Dolphins under Coach McDaniel. So regardless of the coaching staff, he's been a guy that has shown, one, he can commit to an organization, but two, he can prove his worth. He can stick around for a little while. And the Bucs are right back where they were a year ago, in a sense, with an unproven offensive coordinator. But just like Liam Coen a season ago, I think there's a lot of good green flags, if you will, floating around Grizzard right now. And continuity is going to be one of the most important things for a lot of people.
And I think the thing is, like, the Bucs have had success gambling on the guys with no NFL play calling experience, right? Yeah. Liam Coen had at least a little bit. He called a couple of games for the Rams there, and Liam Coen was also a play caller at Kentucky, obviously. But this is similar to Dave Canales, where Dave Canales did not call plays at all in the NFL, didn't call plays until he got to hit Tampa Bay, and I mean it worked out pretty good for both the Bucs and Canales, right? So it was a good hire, and Canales ends up getting a head coaching job after 1 year. So not saying it's going to be the exact same thing, but the Bucs have learned to gamble on these things, and the last time they did it, it paid off. So obviously it's not apples to apples, but I do think there's a chance, right, that it could work out. Grizzard went to Yale, so obviously he's a smart dude. He's a bright guy, just like you said, has survived many different coaches, and that says something, right? Because that means that with all this turnover, these coaches must see something in you, right? There's got to be something there for these coaches to want to be able to keep you when they could very easily just say, well, no, especially when a guy like Mike McDaniel comes in, who's an offensive guy, he ends up keeping Josh Grizzard. And to me, that's a big sign that, like, a bright offensive mind there, right, from the Kyle Shanahan tree and everything like that. That the fact that he wants to keep you around, that's saying something, right? And Liam Coen obviously brought him to Tampa Bay last year as the pass game coordinator. So this is his first season with Tampa Bay. But I mean, obviously they had a lot of success, and you say you're hoping to keep that continuity there. Will it be the exact same thing? No, just like you mentioned, it's not going to be the same tendencies, the same exact looks. There's going to be differences. But I think, overall, I think you want to keep as much the same as possible. And yeah, just like you mentioned earlier again, that was one of the biggest positives. That might have been the biggest positive of Liam Coen, staying when that news came out, that, you were finally going to have some continuity. This is probably the next best thing you could get, right? Since continuity, after Coen left, this is probably the next best thing, right? Yeah, you could hire an outside guy and the terminology may be similar, but it's not going to be the same exact thing. But this will, keep your continuity there. And like I said earlier, keep your coaching staff for the most part intact.
Yeah, and that was going to be my follow-up question, actually. The Bucs interviewed a couple of guys this week. Sheila Haas from L.A. honestly was one of my favorite candidates if they weren't going to promote somebody in-house. But for the people who feel like an outside hire may have been more of a slam dunk, like more of a proven move, because again, I can understand, like, the Bucs have been in this position before with an unproven offensive coordinator. maybe people feel like there were more experienced hires out there, but do you think that continuity that we've talked about time and time again, we're going to say that word a lot on today's show, is that the main reason that they promote their guy here?
I think it definitely helps. I mean, I also think they've seen him work for a year now, right? Like they've seen him inside the building. They know how he works. They know his work ethic. They know the person a little bit more. So I think that gave him an edge in this one as well. But if you looked, I mean, there's a lot of guys that they interviewed, like Nate Shieldhouse, right? Shieldhouse, he wasn't a play caller at the NFL level, right? I mean, Marcus Brady was an offensive coordinator. Dave Ragone was an offensive coordinator, but like other than that, they were probably going to take a gamble on one of these guys. Grant Udinski is 28 years old. He wasn't an offensive play caller before. So regardless, I mean, they were going to take a chance on somebody, right? And I think they probably looked at it. And again, knowing the familiarity there with Grizzard and the familiarity that the offense already has with him, I think they viewed that as a bonus. So I am curious to see what exactly is going to change here. We will have to wait and see. And again, it may not be, you know, night and day difference, but I do think you're going to see some wrinkles here and there that Grizzard, you know, will basically, you know, install. And we'll have to wait and see. But obviously, you know, he's earned it because, like I said, Liam Coen praised him during the season, right? When we weren't even thinking about this as being a possibility, Coen mentioned his name as being a guy who has really helped out on third downs. And the Buccaneers' third downs have been pretty darn good. So if that's any indication of the type of potential play caller, and again, it's a little bit different, but if that's any indication, you know, I think the Buccaneers could be in pretty good hands here.
Yeah, 34 years old, and it's hard to find a coach that young with as much coaching experience as Grizzard already has. Been in the NFL, or been coaching for 13 years. He started back for Yale. I think it was 2012. He started as a grad assistant on the coaching staff and then just kind of worked his way up from there. But you can look at his resume and you can see that, like we said earlier, he finds ways to stick around. He finds ways to prove his worth, and I think he's been a diamond in the rough. Ryan Fitzpatrick, former Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback, Dolphins quarterback, Bills quarterback, Titans quarterback, Rams quarterback, Washington quarterback, Jets quarterback.
Important to note because Fitzpatrick was with Miami when Grizzard was there. So that's the connection.
Yeah, absolutely. He had a lot of praise to give Grizzard and said that he was going to be getting his shot soon. He's happy to see it, although he is a little concerned about his questionable choice of college, being that Ryan Fitzpatrick is a Harvard man himself. Other than that, he had a lot of great things to say about Grizz. And again, you know, the Bucs have really shown these last couple of years with these offensive coordinator hires, clearly with Todd Bowles as your head coach. I know Byron Leftwich didn't exactly work out, but with Dave Canales and Liam Coen, you are now 2 for 2 on guys that the NFL deemed good enough to be a head coach. So the Bucs have had a pretty sound eye for scouting out these diamonds in the rough, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that if you are maybe a little bit nervous, I would just kind of say just trust it a little bit. It may not be the exact hire you wanted, but I would just trust it because the last 2 times they did this, it really worked out in their favor. So I'm not saying Grizzard's going to have the success to where he becomes a head coach after one season.
He'll be coaching the Saints this time next year is what you're saying.
Sure, maybe. Yeah. Just take your pick of a random team. And that's, you know, so, you know, it's a good thing though, right? Like that means you're doing something right. And yeah, when you are 2 for 2, that means you got an eye for this stuff. And then hopefully, you know, like I said, the Buccaneers knowing Grizzard helps and they have an eye for it. So I would just, even if you're ecstatic with the hire, that's great. But if you're not on board, right? Not saying you have to jump on board. The thing I would say though is just, I think they've earned that trust because after 2, you can get it right once. Right? Anybody can get it right once, but when you get it right two times in a row to have the success where that guy leaves after 1 season to become a head coach, you're doing something right. Your process there is something right. So I would trust the Buccaneers organization. I would trust Todd Bowles with that. I would trust Jason Licht with that. I would trust the entire organization when selecting an offensive coordinator. Like I said, We don't know, right? It is the unknown. And I think that's what would have some people worried, and I get it, but I would learn to just trust it a little bit here.
And I don't want to get down the rabbit hole of Todd Bowles and his future in Tampa Bay because, one, he's going to be back as head coach no matter what in 2025. It is what it is. I do want to acknowledge that the most fair scenario for Todd Bowles, which, again, is something that doesn't always get taken into account because people feel whatever way they feel about Todd Bowles, and that's okay. You're allowed. But I think the most fair situation for him to be in was having a healthy roster in 2025 and having Liam Coen back as his offensive coordinator. Well, unfortunately, we thought the second was going to happen. It didn't happen. You end up promoting from within. This is the best option I think they really could have given him. And again, the rest of this offense for continuity. It's going to be largely the same system. There's going to be a lot of 11, 12 personnel looks, just like we saw from Liam Coen. I don't know if they're going to run that 2 running back set that they love to as much as they did last year, but some of the tendencies will be different, but I think the language and everything else will largely be the same. And for Todd Bowles, you then have to beg the question, like, can this offense get better? I know this sounds like a crazy question right now. Maybe it won't in a year from now when he's the head coach in New Orleans. But can this offense get better than it was in 2024 under Grizzard? And that's a loaded question because he is an unproven offensive coordinator, and you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, but the Bucs have a really good track record with this, and Grizz has a lot of things going for him here. I think when we take into account all of the options they could have considered, the most natural fit here, I think, is what they went with.
Yeah, so I mean, better. It's gonna be hard to be better, like than the Buc.
You're right. No, you're right.
I think naturally, like cutting down the turnovers, will naturally help maybe, and that's something with Baker Mayfield. But at the same time, like through 41 touchdowns, like that doesn't happen without taking some chances. So I understand that. So maybe cutting down the turnovers is a place they can get better at. Situationally wise, play calling wise, they can get better at maybe, but in terms of overall numbers, like I'm not sure how much better, right? I think the Bucs are hoping it can be as good, maybe slightly worse, right? Because if it's slightly worse, it's still a darn good offense. And I think you're sort of hoping that that's the case, right? That you're going to be as good as you were in 2024, or maybe you take a slight step back, but maybe having Chris Godwin, assuming he's re-signed, having Chris Godwin for a full healthy season, maybe that sort of negates that kind of step back that you'd take if you have him healthy for a whole year. Maybe that helps. If you have Mike Evans healthy for a whole year 2 of Jalen McMillan, year 2 of Bucky Irving. So I mean, I do think that there is obviously there's some risk here, right? Because again, he's never called plays in the NFL, but you got to start somewhere, right? Everybody's got to start at some point. And again, I think I look at the Bucs track record and again, I don't know if I'd be expecting them to put up better numbers in 2025 than they did in 2024 offensively, because that's going to be pretty hard, but never say never, I guess. I think the Bucs are hoping that, again, when you're keeping that continuity, that it's going to be very similar production to what it was in 2024.
Yeah, the run game's certainly going to be something to keep an eye on as well. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, all dogs. Jalen McMillan, dog. We know that these guys are going to ball out. Baker Mayfield has been able to ball out for 2 seasons in Tampa with 2 different offensive coordinators. I have no doubt he's going to do it again next season. But this run game, I think, was probably the biggest difference maker in some of these games for Tampa Bay because they haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher in a decade. I couldn't tell you the last time they had a top 10, top 5 rushing offense in the NFL. Yeah. Even when they had Doug Martin, I don't know if they were a top 5 rushing unit.
I don't believe so.
I would have to go back and look, but I mean, Bucky Irving is a weapon, but I hope that Josh Grizzard can really take a look at what was working between the gap and the zone runs, making those adjustments, and they can carry that momentum because I would hate to see the potential we saw in 2024. I would hate to see that fall by the wayside because of inconsistencies on the offensive side of the ball. Like I know that they're going to pick that system up. I know that the pass catchers and Baker Mayfield are going to continue to do their thing. I'm looking at the running backs, and I think Grizzard definitely has some big shoes to fill. As much as Liam Coen is a piece of crap, I mean, great offensive coordinator, right? A great play caller, at least for the one season and the sample size that we do have. I would argue that there hasn't been a more impactful OC in a very long time. You know, you can say Byron Leftwich and Tom Brady, but look at that roster, right? Look at that star power.
It was talent.
It was the system they were running. It was an offense that was able to out-talent the rest of the NFL. The Bucs have playmakers. They have dogs, but you need some creative play calling. You need some critical adjustments, and Liam Coen did a very, 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 very good job. You know, we can call Dave Canales. I heard someone else say this, so I'm going to recycle this point. We can call Dave Canales and his work in Tampa Bay good. You got to call Liam great, because that's how much of an improvement it was from 23 to 24. So excited to see what happens here with Josh Grizzard. But final thoughts here.
Really quick, I mean, look, he's pass game coordinator.
Yeah.
Bucs passing game was, I mean, Bucs running game was good, but Bucs passing game was pretty darn good too. And
it was.
That's including multiple games without both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And obviously, he had a bunch of games without Chris Godwin. He had a couple games without Jalen McMillan, a couple games without Liam Coen. Yeah, about a couple games without Cade Otton. Liam Coen being able to find ways, to get different guys involved in the passing game. Grizzard's helping out with that as well, though. During the week, you just don't really see that on Sundays because he's not the one sitting there with the play sheet, right, calling the plays. But now he is going to be, and it is definitely I think a move. Like I said, I think that is expected, but something that I do think is pretty good. I think for both sides.
Yeah, and an interesting point to note here. Scott Reynolds put out his Fab Five already. Really great breakdown. More information on Josh Grizzard. Really anything you could want to know on the guy. But one of the things that was in there is that he worked with more than just Baker Mayfield. He worked with pretty much every player on the offense. Like, he is out there on the practice field day in and day out with this system. He knows the players. There's not going to be an adjustment period early next season. It's not like there's going to be 4, 5, 6 weeks in the beginning of the season where it's like, all right, let's really dial it in. I feel like the Bucs can pick up right where they left off week 1 in 2025, and that's going to be exciting. But, the players seem to like this guy as well, and that's, again, when you cut down the awkward getting to know each other period, I think it ultimately is going to make you more effective early on in the season when you have to be learning things as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, there isn't going to be that meet and greet, right? Yeah. You already know this guy, right? The guys on the offense already know this guy. Obviously, it's going to be in a different role. They're going to be seeing a lot more. Certain position groups are going to be seeing a lot more of him, obviously now. But there is familiarity there, and that can only help. So yeah, it's a positive thing.
The Pro Bowl is this weekend. I know it's the most exciting game of the year for many. The Pro Bowl games.
Yeah.
There are 4 Tampa Bay Buccaneers up there in Orlando for the Pro Bowl games. Couple named as alternates. Baker Mayfield at the quarterback position and Mike Evans at the wide receiver position were both added to the starting roster for the NFC. And Vita Vea and Tristan Wirfs were also up there. Those guys going to be... I don't know what Vita Vea and Tristan Wirfs are going to do aside from like dodgeball and some of the other stuff. But the flag football game, Baker Mayfield, the reigning defending MVP of the Pro Bowl games. Did you know that?
I didn't remember if he won it last year or not.
Yeah.
But obviously, pretty cool. I think he's, what is it? It's like the first Bucs quarterback
first
or whatever.
Quarterback in history.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
To go to multiple Pro Bowls.
Yeah, that's what. Well, I think because technically, I think Brady was elected to both, right, in 2020 and 2021. But obviously didn't go in 2020 because he couldn't. And 2021, he's not. I think the last Pro Bowl they said he went to was like 2006 or something like that. Like he doesn't go. I mean, whatever, right? But a pretty cool stat there. Oh well, kind of sad, but anyways, whatever. It's cool. I should have been him. Maybe should have been a Pro Bowl from the jump. maybe. I hate this sort of, all alternate things, and that's how you get in. Just especially like on the AFC side, like
Yeah.
Russell Wilson's a Pro Bowler, Russell Wilson and Drake May.
Drake May.
Like honestly, like if you look at the numbers, like Aaron Rodgers had better numbers than Drake May did this year. Like I like Drake May as a prospect. I think is going to be a good quarterback. I do, but like Aaron Rodgers had a better season than Drake May did. Like, maybe what did they know Rodgers would say no, and they just said, all right, well, we'll give it to the rookie for the storyline. Like, I mean, I don't hate on the Pro Bowl as much. I think they're doing the most of it what they can. Now because it's becoming like I would much rather them do this than them actually try and play an actual game when they're basically playing two-hand touch. So I'd much rather than actually play flag football
Right.
than play real football, but you're actually playing flag football. So yeah, it is what it is. It's a fun thing. I'm don't really, this is Royal Rumble weekend, so not
Oh,
really, focused on the Pro Bowl as much, but um yeah, it's cool, yeah, see the Bucks represented there, obviously, and originally only two, now up to four, so we'll be able to see them in action in the flag football game, and then obviously in some of the skills those competitions that they have there for sure.
you brought it up here. We'll close it with this Royal Rumble weekend, one of the big four pay-per-views in the World Wrestling Entertainment. Who's your pick to win the Rumble, and why is it John Cena?
I want it to be John Cena.
Don't we all, man?
I don't think it's going to be. So I just think they have him advertised for the Elimination Chamber. I think it's gonna be something where he cashes his ticket to WrestleMania at the Elimination Chamber. I still think it's go ahead.
Does he get that last title reign?
At some point, yeah, I
Yeah.
think. I
I'd
don't
love
know
to
if it's
see
at
it.
WrestleMania, but I need it like I need air.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's going to be CM Punk. That's just who my guess is for the Royal Rumble. Could see Roman Reigns maybe, but I think it's going to be CM Punk. Really quick to answer Richard's question, Evan's side question. How do you feel about the Flyers and Flames trade? He's referring to hockey. So I think it's a good deal for both sides. It's the Flyers get rid of two players that just are talented but weren't really working out, and the Flames get some guys to help them with the playoff push, and Flyers get some money off the books for the future. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Royal Rumble is always. I mean, I think honestly, if you ask most wrestling fans, they'd probably say it's their most like favorite event. Like it's my favorite match. I mean, it's great.
I would argue it's a little more unpredictable than WrestleMania at times.
Yeah.
WrestleMania being 2 nights now, you get to drag it out, all the surprise returns, yada yada. But there's something about either a debut or guys returning in the Royal Rumble is always a lot of fun. I'll never forget watching AJ Styles debut in the Rumble live, and it's crazy too that was that 11 years ago?
No, we're still under, and we're still in single
9
digits.
years
So
ago.
It was 9 years ago. Yeah,
We're getting close, man. We're
where
getting
it's
close.
getting close. Yeah.
Ladies and
Well,
gentlemen, that's
just think we're 3 years away from John Cena's Rumble in '08 being 20 years ago. So that's good.
yeah, it's about time to hang it up. I'm going to get off of here and go take a nap. That's about going to do it for today's episode of Another Sports Podcast. I mean, Cannon Fire Podcast.
That's
Thank
a
you
deep
guys.
cut. If anybody knows that, we're gonna send you something. If anybody can prove that they know what that's about.
Nobody took me up on my offer last week for the sports card. Maybe we don't have any card fans. Maybe nobody was listening. Like I said, nobody was listening. Nobody took me up on that offer. But yeah, if you know Another Sports Podcast, you you truly one of the realest ones out there. Follow our show, the Cannon Fire Podcast, on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show, and of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. You can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL, and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. You got anything coming up this week?
Well, I posted the story about the Bucs hiring Josh Grizzard on the site, so you can go check that out. And then I'm also going to be taking a look at maybe some of the upcoming Bucs free agents and just playing maybe like stay or go, just like based on like my predictions, basically. Maybe not necessarily what I would do, but what I think I could see happening. So going to be playing a little stay and go at some point here within the next couple of weeks.
We also got some more content from Evan here on the YouTube channel. Player grades, player position evaluations, I Bleav is what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. We'll be wrapping up the offensive side of the ball, probably next week. So we still got wide receivers, tight ends, and offensive line before we head over to the defensive side. If you want to see the ones that we have posted, we have published the quarterbacks and the running backs ones already. So go to Cannonfire Podcast YouTube channel and check them out.
Last but not least, you can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. But that's the show. Thank you guys for hanging out with us, watching live on YouTube and listening to the podcast platforms. Thank you very much. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We will see you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucs.